Hey there, Fat is your friend challengers. I'm Angel Balance. I'm one of the many coaches that are helping you out along this journey into a higher fat lifestyle. And I like to call it a higher fat lifestyle because I like that there is freedom associated with that term lifestyle versus diet. I absolutely believe that this is a way of living and a way of choosing food and health or food for health versus dieting or restricting or anything like that. Because I've been through the ringer with diets and that whole vicious cycle, both emotionally, mentally, and habitually. So I wanted to be able to jump in here and introduce myself to you and first and foremost share with you that yes, I am an emotional eater overcomer. I say overcomer because God has graciously given me, He's taught me over the years and continues to help refine those gifts, those skills, the knowledge, and the understanding and the empowerment over those triggers and the habits and things that send me there personally. And so now you kind of know that I have a history. I'm telling you right it from the bat that I have a history of being an emotional eater, and so that alone is a struggle. But then I've also got other reasons for choosing high fat, and on that's mostly for health and healing benefits for my gut and for blood sugar and hormones and all those things. And so that would tell you, and I'm going to share a little bit of my story here, and I've got notes aside to help me stay on track. Because the last time that I introduced myself and told my story, I was like all over the place. So if I'm looking to the side, that's what I'm doing. So I have had a history of symptoms of irritable bowel syndrome. My doctor spoke to me, did not actually give me the diagnosis of irritable bowel, but I matched all the symptoms. If that gives you an idea of the type of symptoms that I was dealing with, he simply told me that I have spastic colon that responded to stress and diet. And so he told me things to eat, not to eat, all that stuff. Did I listen? Off and on, yes, for years. But I also had chronic heartburn, reflux. I took the purple pill for that for many, many years. And we're talking like college, early 20s, right? In middle school and high school, my mom brought me to the doctor who told me that I was hypoglycemic because I was, although I was not ever passing out, I would have heart palpitations in the middle of class. And he would say that it was because my blood sugar was dropping. And so the way to handle that was eat a peppermint, put a peppermint candy in your mouth, and drink some orange juice, and always have peanut butter and cheddar cheese crackers on hand. And so I lived doing that for many, many years. I've also, into my adult life, developed, or actually from as a child, I always had heartburn, by the way. I remember laying in bed, and the heartburn, the reflux, like keeping me awake. And I would go to my mom. Nothing against my mom, but it was like this was what they taught you at the time, and what the doctor told her to do was, if the heartburn is getting too bad, give her a cup of milk and bread to eat. So there were many times that I went to bed with eating a slice or two of bread and a full glass of dairy milk, and that's how I thought that I was supposed to treat the symptoms. And in addition to later in my 20s, the gastro doc telling me avoid onions, avoid mustard, acidic, any kind of spice or acidic foods, all these things, right? Somehow, though, even though I would avoid all those things, I would still, it later developed into the irritable bowel type symptoms, and I would still, from time to time, deal with the reflux, where, and I'm being kind of graphic and very specific right here, but I kind of want you to know like where I come from health-wise, and the symptoms that I am now completely delivered from, but that I've been able to heal nutritionally over time. And so with the irritable bowel or the spastic colon type symptoms, I would literally be I would wake up in the middle of the night very suddenly with very strong, painful cramping. And and honestly, the first time that I remember it ever happening was not in my 20s, was actually in, as a middle schooler, a kid. I was probably 12, 13 years old is the first memory that I have of it happening. And literally everything would go out one end and the other end at the same time until there was nothing left to come. And it would take hours of me in the bathroom. So you can imagine, I love you too. You can imagine, early 20s, I was in a very serious relationship, living with a guy that I thought I was going to marry. And it was embarrassing and stressful. And I did live, I was full-time college, and I also worked 50 plus hours a week in the restaurant business as a front of house manager. And so all that high stress, I guess, kind of helped contribute to the symptoms flaring up whenever they would. But it also was on my wedding day. It reared its ugly little head. By that time, I had been seeing a gastro doc, and he gave me a little pill that I would put under my tongue to try to calm the colon. But nutritionally speaking, I still didn't know, other than to avoid acidic foods, I didn't have any clue what else to do. So I would just ride the wave when the symptoms would come on, And then the other thing is I've always had dry, ashy skin. As a kid, anytime I would scratch, actually I would have to scratch. It just naturally would be extremely dry and irritating in certain types of fabrics. Still to this day, there are some types of materials I prefer not to wear, even though they don't. I don't have the same types of reactions as I used to. I just choose because I like I can tell the difference. But I used to not be able to take a shower without immediately after my skin literally feeling like it was cracking and splitting apart all over, and I would have to rush and put lotion, and I would reapply lotion all day. My grandma would always say, drink water, and yes, that's truth in that, but it wasn't doing it all by itself. But still, no doctor had an answer for me. Later, when my daughter started having some of those same symptoms, I brought her with dryness and ashiness, and then also a little bump on her skin. And I remember getting those same bumps here and in my thighs, and I have them under my eyes still. But I went to brought her to the dermatologist and asked about it, and he said it's a symptom of having too much protein in the skin. It usually disappears later in your 30s. But it's keratosis pilaris, I think is how it's said. But basically, it just kind of went on with also eczema. I would get dry patches here, and I will tell you that this is a journey, and so I'm not always perfect with my eating choices. And when I get off of or out of balance, I would say, of some of my eating choices, where I choose certain foods more often than not, some of it being dairy, some of it being grain, that I will have those breakouts again, and it's like scaly skin, and I'll notice those bumps start to reappear. So anyway, all of that to say, I'm healed in Jesus' name, and I choose to stay ahead of those signs of imbalances through nutrition, through the nutrition choices that I make, so that I can live in more freedom and have a higher quality of life. And if by some reason there's genetically speaking something that can be passed on to my kids, and I see it in them, or it's just the human body is just not meant to handle it, I want to be the mom that lives the example, so that as they grow up and they get in their 20s and 30s and 40s like I am now, they start to recognize, oh, that's why mom ate that way. That's why mom always was talking about when we would eat these foods, it would cause this type of symptoms and signs in our body. I want them to be empowered with the knowledge that I didn't have when I was their age, that I had to wait to discover until my 30s. So just to answer the unasked question, nobody else in my family consistently eats high fat, low carb with me. So I do have, and I can relate to all of you in here who are going to say, I'm the only one in my house eating this way. I have nobody in my family who understands, and out in the extended family, because I can tell you that I'm the same way. My husband and I were still happily married, and he thankfully has taken my advice over the last several years eating, but he enjoys certain foods sometimes more often than what I do. And that's okay because I want him to have that grace and love for me to be able to be on his own journey. And so where I say that to you to say, you're going to have people around you through this journey that are not going to understand. And God bless them from where they, out of their love for you, they may say things that out of a concern, just simply because they don't understand. And it's okay. But be okay with being right where God has put you for right now in your health and fitness journey, and own it and live it, because you never know when that it may be that God has set you to be that solitaire in that circle of friends or family or influence. So it's okay. And like I said, just walk forward, own it, and walk forward in strength with it. So, and don't think that you have to be perfect with it in order to be that example. So I will say also that on the emotional eating side, that I'm not perfect in that area any more than I'm completely perfect in high fat, low carb. And so because of that, usually that's, from this distorted self-image, distorted self-confidence, damaged self-confidence, I should say, and the long time struggle of me trying to figure out who I was and what my personal significance was in the world. And it all kind of stemmed from this place in life where I was sexually abused. But that through that, some people, they choose alcohol, and some people choose shopping as their therapy, and some people choose sex as their therapy. For me, my first choice was always food. And so I have a history of reaching for sugar, lots of sugar, brownie mixes, the sugar in bread, pizza, chocolate, all those things, cheesecake, okay, that it is, I understand that there may be some of you in this group who are kind of like, you don't know, the addiction is real. And I do. I know the sense of relief, but also the sense of guilt and the whole emotional baggage that is wrapped all around those food addictions, and it's particularly sugar addiction, and just the sense of just eating, right? And I used to be a heavy smoker. I smoked I smoked my first cigarette in 5th grade. I know that's shocking, but by high school, I learned how to really smoke, and I was hiding them from my parents. And so by the time I graduated from high school and was working and on my own, I was smoking at least 2 packs a day easy, sometimes 1 pack in a matter of hours in the middle of the night or early morning hours as I was sitting and chilling and eating and drinking beer and everything else with the gang, right? So I had learned to reach for these things to fill the void. And so it just, I had to, I'm sharing that with you so that you know that when you experience those, if you experience those moments, you have someone in this group who understands, and you're not going to be judged for when you slip and fail. We all fail in one way or other. This is just one of the ways, one of the hurdles that I've had to overcome in my journey, and it still likes to rear its ugly head sometimes. And so if if that is you, I want to encourage you never to keep it a secret from the group, never to hold it to yourself, but to be honest and real. And if you don't want to share it openly with a big group, share it first with your coach, whoever your coach is in here. You know, I know what it's like to also kind of see yourself as the girl who is surrounded by skinny people. I grew up in dance, and I was always surrounded by these tall, beautiful, thin, and strong girls, right? And so I judged myself and my body and my ability against them. They were always able to do more and look better than I could in my mind. And so if you're one of those people that is in this group and you're like, wow, you know, I have a whole lot more weight to lose than she does, or whatever, will you stop and take a moment and just love the fact that God has brought you to this place, and it is your time, and you only have to focus on you. There is no comparison. There is no one person is worse than the other person. We are just where we are, and we're in this together. So I will say that I've also been in the cycle of dieting, everything from the 90s way of low fat to taking fat burners and pills and things that increase your heart rate. They're supposed to like make the fat burn off, or keep you not hungry or whatever. And I've just learned that nutrition is always better in the long run. And so if you've been in that place where you've also reached for those FISA, those cleans, those quick solutions, please know that this way may not be a quick solution for everyone. It works at a different rate, a different speed. And it's because we all have different things going on the inside that we can't see from the outside. And, you know, we're going to talk about detox, and we're going to talk about fat and eating fat, losing fat, and hormones, and that, you know, affect your energy and how quickly you see results, and insulin and all these kinds of things. And when you hear those things, I just want you to keep in mind that there's always an individual factor to it, in that you and your situation and your body are unique in some type of, you know, in all kinds of ways. And so your set of combination of factors are not identical to the next girl in this group. And so never compare, but always know that you're right where you should be, and that there is a promise for healing through as you go through, and stay as diligent and consistent in it as possible, and that the compound effect will take over. Okay? All the little action steps that you're going to be taking over the next several weeks are going to stack up over time to produce the healing and the results that you want to see, as well as maybe some surprises that you wouldn't have known were possible. So I stumbled into higher fat after I had first lost a bit. When I finally decided as a new mom that I wanted to control my weight, that I didn't want to gain weight anymore, and I wanted to get control over this eating thing, I first did that the only way that I knew how, the low fat, and eating only 1,200 calories a day. But the same old emotional eating patterns would creep in, and of course I would fail over and over. And then I discovered clean eating, and I did pretty well, but I hated counting calories. So when I did find 21 Day Fix, when it was launched and it came out, and I started learning about those containers that you're going to learn about through that original program, it was freeing to me. And I felt empowered over my food choices and my understanding of the types of foods and how they fuel my body. And through that, through the, you know, just adding Shakeology in, not changing anything, I did lose 15 pounds just simply because of that nutrition being introduced into my body over about a 60-day period of time. I lost 10 to 15 pounds and a couple of dress sizes. And then, and that was just with PiYo. I mean, most people say just PiYo. And I was severely injured on the right side of my body. I had no strength whatsoever. I had not exercised or done anything since high school dance. I couldn't barely hold plank without shaking. Okay, that tells you about how poor shape I was in. And I was the heaviest that I had ever been in my life. And I continued on, and I gained some lean muscle, dropped another dress size, another 10 pounds with 21 Day Fix. In 3 weeks, I remember dropping a full dress size, and I was like, oh my God, wow. And it was simply because I was taking control over my portion control. I was eating more, and I was being very intentional about how much protein and vegetables I was getting into my body than what I was before. So I want you to understand this process that I was gradually going on to get to where I am now, because I started to notice that I was feeling more energetic. I was leaning out more. And then I I became a part of this amazing team that started talking about high fat and low carb. And I thought, and all the health benefits associated with it. And by this time, my body was strong enough to handle high intensity, but I was still like in awe of how all these people were, you know, all my teammates, these other coaches on my team were like able to keep going and just do more and not have to, you know, they just didn't seem to struggle, I guess, through the intense workouts and stuff. And I started to wonder why. And I realized that they were all eating higher fat and they were practicing this thing called intermittent fasting. And I was like, well, I want to try that. Right? And I started to see results from some of them leaning out in body fat, and I wanted that too. So I thought, well, I've still got some fat on my body to lose, and I feel good, but I know I could be stronger. And, you know, my body is strong enough to handle these intense workouts. I want to continue this trend. So I felt empowered with these containers, and they promised to teach me how to do it with these containers, which is just what we're teaching you. So I got to keep my beloved system of color-coded containers, but then be able to flip it on its head or really kind of further my journey, nutritionally speaking, to even more intentionally heal and get stronger. And so I started to learn how to further heal my body and help my body rely on fat for fuel instead of the sugar and carbs. And that was amazing when that transition happened. And I was, you know, no longer having to reach for carbs right before a workout to feel like I could do a workout. And I was feeling in control again of my energy and my endurance. And I won't tell you that it was completely easy, because it wasn't. I still had those urges to notionally binge, right? On carbs and sugar in those first several weeks. But once I pushed past that point, I consistently started to see my body fat start to lean out and move and just start to melt off. I broke a plateau in my actual scale weight, and I don't rely just on scale weight, but that was a big thing to me at that time that I remember noticing. But the other thing was the clarity of thinking and how more pure I felt that my energy was. It was no longer reliable just on the food that I was eating, but it was like it seemed to come from me. Not my food. I don't know how else to explain that. So it was very empowering, and I continue to participate in the higher fat moving forward. I'm now a fitness instructor of a high intensity format, several days a week, and I do it fasted. I don't eat before I go into my workout and before I go into teaching these high intensity workouts. And I see it as a choice for freedom in my health and in my body and in my energy, not a restriction.
And so we're going to talk more about that later in the group, I'm sure, about that flipped mindset. But it's just freeing is the promise that I want to give you. So over the course of time, I no longer have those IBS symptoms. I am so much better with my skin symptoms, and I feel like I am on that right path for completely healing it. And for the first time in my life in 2016 when I tried high fat, low carb, was the very first time I ever saw ab definition going down. So if that's a motivator to any of you from a health perspective and then physical fitness wise, strength and results, then I hope it gives you hope that you'll also have those things for yourself. So I'm also eating way less than what I was. I hate to say less. I'm eating less frequently. Let me tell you that. I'm eating like way more calorie wise than I ever did before. And yet I'm not gaining 50, 60, 80 pounds like I did before. Do you understand what I'm saying? Because of the quality and the choices of the foods, the types of foods that I'm eating. But because the fasting thing in there being an element, I am no longer feeling a slave to my eating all day, feeling hungry. I no longer feel that way. So I know the difference now in how I feel and the signs in my body when I need to turn things back around and in balance again. So I want, so that in the seasons of time, if I fall out or out of balance or start choosing other foods that are not in this plan or way of eating that we're teaching you, you're going to know, like I know now, how to get yourself back on track, judging by how you feel and the symptoms that you will start to experience freedom from. Okay, so it's going to be a very clear indicator for you moving forward, how to turn the dial and back in your favor. And so I want to tell you this too. I still enjoy birthday cake with my girls. I still enjoy holiday treats when the holidays come. I just choose for it to be an exception to the norm, no longer my weekly way of living and binging for a month on end, right? So I'm so much happier with my quality of living because my focus is not on food so much as a determinant of, how well my day went, if that makes sense. It made room for more things in my life to come into their true right place of priority. So anyway, that is all about me and my story and and I'm hoping that some of you in this group are able to relate to me and my story and where I come from, and that I'll be able to see you celebrating some of those same types of victories and milestones as you embrace this challenge and this transition into a new way of eating and living healthy. So anyway, I just want you to know that it's not, like I said before, it's not always going to be easy, but if you determine in your heart, and this is what I've determined in my heart, I am an overcomer, and I'm determined to be the best version of me, because, and fill in the blank. And so whatever that fill in the blank for you, whatever that blank would be for you, to fill it of why you know you need to be an overcomer and you need to be the best version of you, let it fuel you and guide you over the next 6 weeks. And so just how I now know that I'm worth it, and the struggle and the failing forward, you are too. All right. So I'm going to let you guys go, and hopefully you're able to make it through that story. I still went 30 minutes, dang it. So if you need to break it up in the replay, then I totally understand. All right. Talk to you guys later and see more of you in the weeks to come. Bye.